Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Graham, and to Jeremy. So welcome.
Hi.
Yeah, thanks for
Nice
having
to meet
us.
you.
Yeah, so can you tell us a few words about yourself and about the tool you want to show us?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Graham. For many years, I was a CTO at a startup and just used the commercial A/B testing systems to help us grow our product and quickly hit limits on what these existing platforms could and could not do, and ended up building our own platform in-house. And since leaving that company, we realized that this is a journey that many companies go on, that they end up building their own A/B testing systems in-house. And so Jeremy and I are building Growthbook, which is an open source A/B testing platform with the idea of giving every company the power of these custom in-house built A/B testing platforms without having to build it themselves.
And hi, I'm Jeremy. I worked with Graham for many years and sort of built the A/B testing platform at the previous company. Yeah, I've been talking to all the top companies and really trying to build a platform that Google and Microsoft have in-house. That's kind of our end goal. Yeah, so I can share a demo of what we're doing. Wait, are you able to see that? Yeah. Cool. So this is
Maybe
kind of
you can enlarge it a little bit.
Yeah. Is that better?
No.
Yeah. Cool. So this is our sort of blank system when you install it, and we're available as a Docker container, so you can self-host it. And we really sit on top of your existing data. So the first step is connect to your data warehouse, whether that's Redshift or Snowflake. Yeah, just give us the connection info and then tell us a little about the shape of your data. I'll show that in a little second. Then after you connect to your data, you want to sort of define a metric library. And these are the things that you're trying to improve in your application. So it might be revenue or click-through rate or time on site, something like that. And once you build that metric library on top of your data, then you can start analyzing experiments. So I could switch over to an account that already has some kind of sample data in it. So I'll kind of show you what it looks like to sit on top of your data. So when you configure a data source, I just have a Postgres database in here. You start by adding a query that returns kind of which users saw which variation in an experiment. And it's pretty straightforward query. Like if you're using something like Segment or Snowplow, it's really straightforward to get this. You kind of just need the user ID, the time they saw the experiment, what experiment they saw, what variation they saw on that, and then you can add whatever other columns you want, and that'll be kind of let you drill down into results a little bit more.
And you always need to have the column names. So do they always need to be like variation ID or not necessarily?
Yeah, so you can use like aliases in SQL to kind of transform whatever you have. Yeah, so we're expecting these column names here.
Okay.
But you can do joins, you can do whatever you want to get that data in that format. And then the second query we need is, page views probably isn't the right name, but it's just kind of like historical activity on your site or application. And that's used to kind of predict running times ahead of time and do some other things like look at just overall metrics instead of for a specific experiment. And then, yeah, I'll see down here, we also this a little bit, but we let you export things as a Jupyter notebook. In order for that to work, we kind of need a little bit of Python code of how to query your data source from within a notebook. Yeah, so that's the initial data source connection. Then for building out your metric library, yeah, it's very similar. You're kind of writing queries on top of your data source. And same idea, you have a kind of user ID, the value of the metric, and the timestamp. So these really simple queries, we combine using common table expressions into big giant SQL queries that actually pull results for experiments. Cool. Yeah, so I'm going to show an example experiment now. So this is an experiment of testing a button on a site, like putting the actual price in the button instead of just a generic label. So you can see here, you can add metadata using Markdown, can upload screenshots of the different variations. This is a really good just place to document what was actually tested. And if I go over to the results side, so we have, yes, you can add metrics and guardrails. And metrics are things that you're trying to improve in your experiment. Guardrails are things that you just don't want to hurt.
Like health metrics, right?
Yeah. And so we have a Bayesian statistics engine behind the scenes that's doing all the analysis. And so as you add the metrics to the experiment, we're hitting your snowflake cluster, pulling the data, running it through our stats engine, and visualizing the results. And because we're Bayesian, we're able to show actually probability that it's better instead of p-values. Yes, I don't know if you ever had to explain p-values to someone, but it's yeah, not fun. So yeah, we found this is a lot more intuitive way to display things. And what's really cool about us, because we sit on top of the data, we actually expose all the raw database queries that we're running. So you can pull this into Looker or whatever tool you want and kind of dig deeper into the data. And then we even let you export everything as a Jupyter notebooks that you could, yeah, tweak things if you want and yeah, dive even deeper. We do let you split by dimension. So a few built-in ones, like if you want to break down results by date, or if you define your own custom ones, like you can break down by country, for example, and see for each metric how the test performed per country and look for kind of outliers and interesting data you want to dig into further.
That's nice.
Yeah, and I won't go into, but we have some other sort of cultural features like way to do idea management and prioritization and kind of generating presentations to share with the wider team.
I have a couple of questions about this experiment stuff. So in this experiment stuff, first you can define an experiment, so you can use it also as a documentation, right? So you write all this, what you show us. So this is something that I can just go and write. Like this is the, this is what the experiment is about. So this is the control. This is the variation A. This is like maybe another variation. So you write everything here. And then you use this as a sort of internal documentation tool, right? And in addition to that, so once you have this documentation, you can also just go and check the results. So is the change significant at the end or not? Is there uplift or not? So this is what experiments tab shows us, right?
Yeah. And how we tie that together, we just have an experiment ID and the variation IDs. And that's kind of all we need to combine with those queries that you wrote earlier to pull results.
Is it just 2 variations always?
Oh no, you can have as many as you want.
Okay.
We do provide SDKs to help you implement the test as well, but that tends to not be terribly hard to do, and it can vary a lot depending on the company that's using it, or the state of your traffic or the tech stack you have.
So you mean like when, let's say, there is a request for like the user comes in and you want to assign the user to a particular variation, to a particular variant, and then you say you have an SDK for that, right?
Yeah, we have SDKs for a few different languages. We have JavaScript, PHP, Python, Ruby, but it's kind of optional. At the end of the day, as long as the data can get into your warehouse, we can analyze it and show you the results. This just helps you run the actual experiment for users if you don't have a method for that already.
Yeah, and if you want more integration, we do support webhooks to allow you to push from our platform back out to the code, so you can turn off and on tests and actually have it change what's happening on your site. One of our philosophies is that we never want to be in the critical rendering path. So at no point is our code, or will our systems be critical for the rendering of your product or app.
Yeah, so instead of like dropping a script tag on your site, it's going to block the page load. We kind of let you sync the experiment configuration to your systems with webhooks, and then everything's rendered locally. Yeah.
Okay, nice. Sorry, I think I interrupted you. You wanted to show ideas, right?
Yeah, I could show that quickly. We have we're not trying to recreate Jira or anything like that, but it's just a lightweight way to organize experiment ideas. And one interesting thing we do support is sort of predicting how long an experiment's going to run before you actually run it. So if you tell us kind of what metric you're trying to optimize, what pages it's going to run on, a few other things like targeting a specific segment of users, then we can query your data, figure out how long it's going to take, and kind of give you an objective impact score. And that takes into account not just the traffic level, but also kind of how important this page is to the metric. So if you only get 10% of conversions to your blog and everything else through other pages, doesn't matter how amazing your test is, you're only going to at most affect 10% of your users. So we take that into account when we calculate impact score. Yeah, is there anything else I think we should show, Graham, or kind of a good overview?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good overview. I think we put a lot of thought into making sure that it's not just a tool that shows you results, but a tool that helps you run a successful experimentation program. And so there's a lot of effort put into documentation and the cultural side of it as well. So you can share the results out with your team and make sure that that your experimentation program is set up for success.
Yeah. And can you run this thing locally?
Yeah, so everything is released as a Docker container. So yeah, it's just a single Docker container needed to run. And then we do have MongoDB just to store sort of a cache of experiment results and your team accounts. We do have like some access control levels so that you can have sort of read-only users and full write access.
Okay, so if I want to play with this, to experiment with this, all I need is like a Docker container with a Growthbook, then instance of Mongo, and then some database with my data. Right?
Yeah,
and that's enough to get started.
Yep. Yeah, we do have a app.growthbook.io if you want to play around with the cloud version. You will need to potentially open up some holes in your firewall to connect to your database, but
yeah, we don't deal with any we don't store any personal information or anything like that. So the experiment data stays on your servers, and all we deal with is aggregate information about the experiments.
So like this is the data we get back, one row per variation with the mean and standard deviation. So we don't even see your user IDs or anything like that. So yeah, really good for sensitive data. Yeah,
data compliance is increasingly hard, important, and a lot of the tools don't work that well with protecting your company's data, your private data.
Okay, nice. Do you want to show anything else?
Not that I can think of right now.
Your GitHub page, what is there?
Yeah, I can pull up our GitHub page. Yeah, so GitHub repository. Let me make this a little bigger.
Oh, so you
really
already have Docker Compose. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so if you just want to get started quickly, that includes Mongo as well as the R container. Yeah, so these 3 lines, and then 5 minutes later, it'll be running on localhost.
Yeah, that's nice. If somebody wants to contribute, how can they do this?
Yeah, we're always looking for contributors. So our stats engine is written in Python, and always looking to improve that and add extra edge cases and handle more distributions of data. Yeah, so anyone who's a Python expert and wants to contribute there would be great. We're using pandas and NumPy and SciPy, so all kind of standard libraries there. And then we have SDKs in a number of languages. So if anyone wants to add an additional language, we actually have documentation for that. Pull up our doc site really quick. Yeah, we have this build your own client library that kind of goes through all the steps that you go through to actually run an experiment. So it's, if you want to add Java or Go client, that'd be awesome.
Okay. And do you already have some outstanding issues, like good first issues, if somebody wants to pick up something?
Yeah, we have a few tagged with that. Yeah, we do all our project management and planning out in the open. So, everything that's going to be we're planning on working on is on our roadmap. And yeah, so there's kind of everything we're working on is here in GitHub. We have a few good first issues, like adding tooltips to one of our graphs so that you can actually see the numbers as you mouse over it. Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. How many people are working on it right now?
So currently it's the 2 of us, but we do have about 7 contributors total. The 2 of us are working on it full time.
Yeah, I'm wondering how it looks like. So you're doing planning, so you're putting all these issues to GitHub, and then somebody who feels like doing this just goes and takes it.
Yeah, it'd be great to comment and let us know you're working on, so we're not like, both doing it at the same time. But yeah, we do have a fairly active Slack channel. We link here from our GitHub page. Yeah, we have a fairly active Slack channel that, yeah, it's a really good place to get started. And we're more than happy to jump on a video call and do some pair programming if you want to get set up.
Yeah, so we are actively developing this, and we also love to talk to anyone who's interested in experimentation or has been running these internal tools. Even if you're not interested in switching, like we still love to talk to anyone.
Okay, nice. And the best way to reach out to you is Slack, right?
Yeah, Slack, or we do have just hello@growthbook.io if you want to reach out to both of us.
Okay, and what are your plans? What do you want to do next?
So what we've realized is that there's a big difference between companies that run experiments, like a couple, and companies like your Netflix and your Google and Facebook and FANG companies that run experimentation at enormous scale. And so, LinkedIn's running 40,000 simultaneous experiments. And when you get to that scale, the needs you have of a testing platform get quite different, and you need to be very sophisticated with your data. So our plans are to add a lot more sophistication around the statistics engine, make sure that we're using best practices around avoiding multiple testing problems and some other issues that can occur at that scale. Yeah, and then just generally making it usable when you get into those numbers, making sure that metrics can be managed, and then things like that. Jeremy, did I miss anything?
I think that's a good overview. Yeah, just we want to be as good as the platforms Google and Microsoft built in-house and give that to everyone. So that's kind of our end goal there.
Yeah, that's quite nice of you for doing this. And
yeah, we realized it's sort of madness that so many companies or so many people are rebuilding these tools in-house with almost the exact same functionality, and it's from my experience, it's hard to do. And one bug in your internal implementation, and suddenly all of that work you've done on experimentation, like it's unknown as to what the actual effects were. And so it's important to make sure that you're trustworthy statistics behind what you're building. And so we just released that as open source.
Do you plan to include non-Bayesian A/B tests there with p-values?
We do have that in the works. I think it tends to get a little bit contentious around Bayesian versus frequentists for some reason. What we have found is that when you get it nailed down, it doesn't seem to make a huge difference as to which one you use. There are some advantages in Bayesian in terms of not needing a fixed horizon problem. But one of the biggest that we found is that it's very easy to explain the statistics to non-technical people with a Bayesian engine rather than a frequentist. And because a lot of our users of this platform will be product managers or other people in a company that may not be as familiar with the statistics, but the Bayesian works very well for that.
Okay, I understand. Do you have any advice for anyone who is watching this, apart from going Bayesian?
I'm not sort of coming down on one side or the other. I think you can use whatever statistics you like. In fact, we designed our experimentation library in Python specifically so that you could swap it out to something if you wanted something else. It's very pluggable in that regards. Advice to anyone, like one of the things that amazes us is the number of companies that don't test the products that they're launching. And that's always sort of amazing to me, right? Like, how do you know if what you're building is successful? And part of the problem is that some of the implementation of other platforms can be either very expensive or just very hard to do. And we tried to make that as easy as possible to just test everything. And most of the companies have data anyway, so just use that. Jeremy, did I miss anything?
Yeah, I guess advice would be to kind of make experimentation really core to your product development process. Like everyone kind of assumes you have, continuous integration where you're testing everything that goes out to make sure there's no bugs. But a lot of companies haven't taken that jump to make sure, besides just being bug free, your code is actually helping your product. I think experimentation is really the best way to do that.
Yeah, indeed. So if somebody wants to start with experiments, who they should convince first? Product managers?
Yeah, I guess first step is just having good data. So you can't really run an experiment and analyze if you don't have a really solid just analytics and data tracking. So I feel like it's pretty easy to convince people in a company that that's important, at least. Then once that's in place, adding an experimentation layer, like being able to point to something, say this change increased our revenue 2%. All it really takes is 1 or 2 experiments from the ground ups of someone running to really convince the whole team that that's important.
Yeah, a lot of the experimentation came out of marketing efforts, and most of that was because they had the data to track and an intense focus on the return on investment for what they're doing. For product, it's sort of a little bit different in that not every team is asking the question like, what does success look like for this product? And once you start asking that question, then measuring it is really easy. And it may not be things that are directly tied to like what a growth team might work on in terms of revenue, but you can actually put metrics behind almost everything you do. And in that case, like experimentation doesn't just live in marketing, doesn't just live in a growth team, it becomes part of the whole company process.
Okay. So measure everything and then track everything, right?
Yeah, that's right. One of the things that you find is that a lot of your instincts around what's right and wrong is actually way off. It's very, very humbling. And I think that's an extremely important aspect of building a healthy culture, is like being humble about what will work and what will not work. And experimentation is just a great way to introduce that.
Yeah, I think Microsoft they run tens of thousands of experiments a year, and I think only 10 to 30% of them are successful, depending on the team. So, these are really smart people. Every test they run, they think they're going to win, and they're wrong 70 to 90% of the times. You really just need to test a lot to get those wins.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for the advice. And thanks for also coming, joining us, and then showing the demo. I think that would be it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.